welcome to Ventures and Visionaries, Episode 6, Cultivating a Culture of Innovation. I'm your host, Mordy. I'm an entrepreneur, business founder, strategic consultant, people developer, and problem solver. The podcast is about people, entrepreneurship, business, and innovation. How do these areas contrast and complement each other, or better yet, create leverage and multiply each other? Today, my guests are J.D. Morris, a Forbes Council member. He's also a board member of NACD and is a private equity professional. He buys and sells businesses in various sectors like medical devices, PC radio stations, collections of green energy, and more. And Steven Etienne is passionate about navigating the world of private equity, syndicating private credit, leverage buyouts, and optimizing real estate assets. He's worked with top firms such as Deloitte and Ernst & Young. Steven, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brings you to the world of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, Mordy, thanks for the introduction. So I actually started my career off in banking securities, very traditional path. Essentially was providing debt to other consumer banks, predominantly in the Northeast. I then ventured into the Big Four, public accounting, consulting. Spent some time at Deloitte and Ernst & Young. Was the management consultant at Deloitte, predominantly working with insurance companies, banks. And during my time at Ernst & Young, well, further down the road, I had pivoted into industry, predominantly the real estate space. Up to my time when I had moved back into the Big Four, I was essentially working alongside a lot of high net worth individuals, learning from them, their pathway, how they essentially was able to create their wealth and stepped away from the traditional, pathway of kind of just working the 9 to 5 and working 40, 45 years and essentially just kind of grinding it out that way. Most of the folks that I had worked for or alongside with were essentially entrepreneurs in their own right? Folks that had founded their own businesses, either if it was a brick and mortar or even just, a self-employed individual that would run their own law practice or just doctors in general, but would ultimately find their pathway through real estate, which is where we basically met through. During those times, I had essentially kind of learned the business through them, and then I later pivoted into other industries, including legalized cannabis. Relocated from New York down to Florida, and from Florida, I was actually predominantly working out west and also abroad, in Canada and also in South Africa, and essentially kind of just immersed into a whole new space in itself, learning about how to put together SPACs and other creative investment vehicles on a space or on an industry that was historically marginalized, that a lot of folks just didn't have that much knowing about, right? And fast forward, more recently, probably within the last like 5 to 7 years, spent some time at Iconic, more so on the private equity side. Then later went into Newark, where spent some time working within opportunity zones and also ultimately managing a portfolio of $500 million in real estate. So, kind of dabble in a few spaces, but ultimately I think right now, with the group, I have a team, we're predominantly looking at allocating some strategies across both debt and equity within cannabis, where we're making loans out to other operators. But on the equity side, we are allocating monies into essentially putting up storefronts here in New York, across Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan. First one is out in Kings Plaza, not to put a shout out there, but and also a delivery service here in Gowanus, Carroll Gardens, predominantly focused on that Northwest pocket. And we have a queue of licenses that we're also capitalizing as well through some other SPVs. Essentially, the thesis is that with rescheduling and federal legalization on the horizon, we believe that this will open up a larger pool of buyers that will want to diversify some of the traditional retail categories that they might have been looking at in the past, and also seek out more yield. And I want to say more so on the store level, we're looking to introduce or bring more of a curated experience to consumers that have been lacking thus far, and breaking away from that traditional liquor store model that people typically see in a
Wow.
dispensary today. So that's the short of it. So sorry for being
No,
long
this is
winded with
great.
that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I really appreciate you sharing with us not only your journey, but what it is that you see in terms of opportunities. Maybe we'll get a little bit background from JD as well. Let's start a little bit about how you've arrived at the world of entrepreneurship and what are you up to these days?
Well, great. I've always been an entrepreneur since 16, actually 14, doing my own lawn business. And then I was very fortunate at 21. My dad said, "You have to be a self-made man," and said pushed me out and had to find a job during college. And ironically, I ended up working for the board of directors of that, or board of trustees of that college. So I ended up working with a guy that owned several newspapers and then several other guys that were entrepreneurs and a U.S. senator. So I went from thinking, just getting exposed to a whole different world. And ever since then, I've been working with high net worth individuals, creative individuals, trying to find exceptional people with the guideline of you like to learn and you're willing to have different opinions. So right out of college, I was working with five guys. Two worked for Republican presidents and two worked for Democratic presidents. And we all invested together. We all had a good time together. We were all open minded. So it was really amazing. And ever since then, I've just been working with amazing people, preferably either people that and then also been lucky to be dealing with amazing people that have done amazing things that are what you call today a family office. But I just look at it more as an individual that has high net worth individual. So right now, I'm working with a family. We pulled some technology out of a Saudi university, based it in London. It's a cutting edge innovation. Instead of using, it's a chip using quantum dots versus silicone. So totally different, and we're raising money and for it. We have another company that's AI that the company keeps evolving, and that's why it's important to learn. During COVID, prior to COVID, we were focusing on hotels. And then during COVID, obviously, hotels was a disaster to try to develop a new technology innovation in because they're all shut down. So we actually pivoted, and that was because people were based again on learning and growth and innovation. And right now, we just finished up and signed our first customer, the airport of Oakland. And this technology goes over cell phones, emails, walkie-talkies was a unique thing. There's a lot of industries that still use walkie-talkies and mass communication. So it just collects all the data and finds trends for you. So at the airport, they're always looking for why are planes late. So it's able to collect all this data from people's voice, from people's emails, from people's tablets, and then point out and say, hey, there's a trend of certain planes being late Tuesday. And then it can point to some of the reasons. And so, again, working with entrepreneurs that are always doing change and creating things, and then finding technology that you can apply is an amazing process. On a less, innovative side, but still we're trying to figure out how to bring innovation. We are looking at EBITDA companies. So we're looking at buying doctors' offices. So tomorrow or this afternoon, I have a conversation with a guy that owns hopefully 11 pet hospitals. And we have certain ways of cutting costs old school, where we have a Chinese direct partner that can cut a lot of costs and shipping and supplies. And then we're going to try to get into the technology piece. And then if it makes sense, buy that and buy other ones, replicate that. We did that in the dental space. It was a innovative technology at the time called veneers, but when we got into it, nobody knew about veneers. And so we were able to bring veneers to dentist practice that didn't have a high-end profitable product. They were still doing a $75 cleaning. And then all at once they're selling a $10,000, $20,000 veneer system that had a much higher profit margin. And even anywhere we've been fortunate to bring innovation. So we brought innovation to the yachting business. We went from being one of the smallest brokers in St. Pete with 12 listings to, in half a year, because of our technology and because of our innovation and marketing, to having over 600 listings worldwide and being the second largest yacht broker in the world. So I really love innovation because, and that's what I'm about. And I have a saying: life is simple. People make it complicated. So I'm very excited about AI and how we can augment AI doing some of the stuff that people make complicated, that AI can make simple. But right now, as I said, I'm always looking for former CEOs that are looking to get back in the game and go out and buy EBITDA companies, or innovative people with innovative technology, and then trying to figure out. So that's my fun job, is helping out. So the quantum solutions was a quantum chip and sensory is my creative activity, and then the what I call the potential home runs, and then the day to day is working with CEOs that have a track record and want to go back out and get back involved in the game and buy companies. So right now we're looking at buying packaging and display companies with one CEO. In the healthcare space, we have another CEO that's had a track record of building and selling companies. So we're helping him look at buying companies. So I kind of take what I say, the high low road and the low road, with the low road hopefully hitting a hockey stick with innovation of new technology, and the high road being solid EBITDA
Right.
companies. And so I'm always looking to talk to great people. So thanks for having me on the show, and great to meet a new person.
JD, thank you so much. And so, look, both of you clearly believe that innovation is core to your business, and innovation can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So maybe we just get a little bit of a definition over here. It could be completely transformational, like we spoke about. It could also be incremental, where you take a bunch of things that, now the iPhone would be an example, right? Apple didn't invent much of anything that went into that first iPhone. It all existed. They just took it and packaged it differently. So maybe let's talk a little bit about which one excites you more, and which angle do you take a little bit more of? Steven, maybe we'll start with you again. What excites you about finding that innovation, and what kind of innovation is good for you?
So when I think of transformation, or I'm sorry, when I think of change, it's definitely more transformational. It's more change. Um, so, with what we're dealing with right now, I would like to think that the in-store experience, or when someone would walk through a space, is something that we pride ourselves in wanting to bring about change from. And it's more simple than just having to just walk into a store and just maybe walk up to a counter and just buy something. I think it's something where, for us at least, we're looking to leverage data, education, technology, experience, community. We're trying to bring all these things all into one umbrella and have these folks essentially kind of experience all these essentially components, if you will. So that innovation is basically a fusion of all those elements, and that's what we're kind of thinking or hoping that one would experience when they walk into one of our stores. So that's what I think of
It sounds
innovation.
like what you're saying is that if you take a lot of different small components from different organizations and or areas of life that are done correctly, and bringing them all together, essentially transforming an experience.
Yes, at least that's what the output that we're doing. But I feel like just innovation in itself it's just change, right? It's just kind of going against what might have been common practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? That not necessarily doesn't have to be a brand new technology that's coming into the fold, essentially. I think that might be like more towards the, you know, high end, or towards, the end of the spectrum per se, right? I think innovation can almost be as small as good customer service, quite frankly.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. JD, in your world, is experiential innovation something that you work on as well, or are there different types of innovation that you tend to think about?
Well, because we run the gamut of early stage and large companies, it's kind of a interesting answer. I'm very excited about quantum solutions. We're raising a round with other people to take it to the next level. Total game changer, and the sensory, so they can see through smoke. You can help use it for safety and looking at packaging. Just the ability for use AI and the chips to sense things is beyond and extraordinary. So that gets me very, very excited about how we can do game changers and make things better. So it's for the fire department; they can use a camera, look in a building, see through the smoke, and see what's going on behind the smoke. I mean, that's a game changer. So that's, I love working with a company like that. I spend time with somebody that's making a big change. And so there's what what you call a home run opportunity. But then again, with some of the larger companies, I had a guy that said, very basic change. Instead of pricing, we had 3 million records that needed to be priced every month. And instead of pricing it at the end of the month, we priced it every day. Totally changed our accounts receivable, totally changed everything, because instead of taking 45 days to run a process, it took 10 days to run a process because we got rid of all the bulk. So, it's really amazing how innovation can be something small that somebody points out that can be a big game changer. And so it was a big game changer for us because we had, our accounts receivable went from 45 days before we could bill somebody to 10 days. And then there was a revolutionary change, like quantum solutions, where, it allows safety for factories. And, the AI and the ability of the camera allows it to provide safety for inspecting stuff. Or technology applied to, like, you're looking at fires, or if you were using a drone flying it around in a battle, you can see through the smoke. And so, um, you know, both are amazing. The only difference is it's taking us a lot of work with the quantum chip to bring about change to the industry, and so we're having to work with everybody to introduce the technology, roll it out. So if you're going to go for a game changing innovation, there's some risk, and there's a time
For
time
sure.
lag, and then if you're going to go for something, and there was some time lag too on us altering our platform for billing. It took a lot of monitoring and changes, so it was a 6 months change, but it was something that was very easy and feasible to see how we were going to implement and change it. And actually, it happened in 30 days. We just were trying to make other changes, and we just unfortunately didn't find that huge, significant change. And so, my biggest challenge is, putting energy into something. Are you going to see the results and get amazing changes?
Yeah.
So with this sensory company, Chip, we're going to see amazing results. It's a given. Some of the other changes, you have to be careful because you could always make changes and make something not as successful.
Stephen, what do you
as
think about the idea of investing in dynamic or very large changing things that will ultimately not yield any results? Like, how does one curb the downside risk? Maybe you can give JD some advice here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think it definitely kind of comes down to risk appetite, right?
Yeah.
I think less is more. I think it's definitely a matter of, I mean, JD, you're definitely obviously well experienced in this regard, right? But I think maybe putting out a small sample test, right? Different pockets. Maybe it's more of like an A/B variable testing approach where, A might be a very small control environment of the particular change that you might wanting to roll out, and B might be a part of that variable. But again, it's all about maybe sampling a small subset of the population before kind of rolling out and seeing how it would impact or affect the much larger rollout. So I'm definitely big
Yeah.
on
A/B
small
testing.
samples. Yeah.
A/B testing is important, but I mean, I point though to, if you find that Airbnb uh, went to more of a web with photograph activity versus there was something called vacation by owner, talking about real estate, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was more like Craigslist in the beginning, and so they kept the Craigslist model. It worked really well for a while, but when Airbnb came out, wow, they were the new go-to. Of course, they had a lot of money dumped into $500 million of money dumped into you. Helps you grow a lot faster. But Vacation by Owner got buried, and nobody barely knows about that company. And I was doing real estate development and using vacation homes back in the '90s, And, it was vacation by owner. There was no Airbnb. So it's kind of interesting because sometimes it's good to test and change. And then other times you have to be careful to make sure somebody doesn't, totally change the industry.
So how do you protect yourself?
You don't protect yourself. There is no protection. You
Yeah.
either do it or you don't.
So you came up with this genius idea, and you are not first to market, or you are first to market, but somebody with deeper pockets now comes in. What do you do?
Sometimes the first to market can be the very reason that you got buried in the first place, right? It's either did you have tailwinds when you committed the act or not? That's how I kind of looked at it. You brought up VRBO and Airbnb. I think that's a great example because what did Airbnb had for these guys that ultimately, aside to them having a lot of money kind of fall like in their laps, even up to that point, I
It's a
feel
great name, by the
that
way.
when you just
By the way, like it's a great name. Like let's not minimize that as well. By the way, please continue. Sorry, Steven.
Airbnb. That's true. That is true. I mean, these guys, I feel like they had a lot more use cases, and also they provided a way or a pathway for folks who had signed up for their platform to simply kind of capitalize on what they might had access to. And like, let's not forget at the very start of it with Airbnb, a lot of people who were making money off Airbnb didn't necessarily own the property or own the real estate. They just had access. And that was all that was kind of initially needed in order to just to participate.
What?
And I think that might have gave a one up over the former VRBO model, where it was like the secondary vacation homes that folks, would have kind of had to go out of their way to get to, where Airbnb was almost like everywhere when you
Right,
think
and
about it, right?
they're
More
competing
accessible.
with also. They're also adding in the dimension of business travel because you really can just stay anywhere as opposed to a vacation where you're looking for something a little bit more. Maybe I don't know. These are good questions. Yeah,
Secluded.
yeah, but
Yeah.
maybe we bring this back a little bit more to something that most people can relate to because not at least I am not launching an Uber, but I am involved a little bit more in emerging technologies like AI. And JD, you mentioned a little bit about some of the AI stuff that you're excited about. Maybe you can speak a little bit about some of the technologies that you're seeing that are, let's take it together, both disruptive on the one hand, but have enough practical infrastructure to make it useful for the average person to be able to use and make a difference in their lives.
I met the guy that invented the phone prompts, which I think is kind of just was destructive, but the businesses said, it destroyed customer service, because it's like press one, and then you're like, sometimes you're like, press, 2, 3, press 2, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, and so, he was proud of that. And part of me said, thank God, it's illegal to strangle somebody. Because, it really was horrible. You know what I mean? It was just like every time and then some of them don't let you go to an operator, so you're like kind of can't find the right button. So that was innovation from a standpoint of created something that cut costs because they're like we cut our costs from $3 a call to 25 cents a call. It's like well the goodwill for the customer was definitely made it probably like a negative $15 in some cases. But now that AI is here and you can talk to it, you don't have those crazy prompts. And if they run their system correctly and you don't have a solution with AI and it puts it to an operator, then that's extremely successful. And so how you set up your innovation is really important because through the prompts and these companies that just didn't, if you didn't find the right button, it hung up on you, it would be like, thank you for calling, click. And you're like, that's not good technology. I mean, you can say, hey, I cut calls from customer service, I'm not providing it. But,
alienating the customers sucks too.
Yeah. I really heard at one point that Sprint wireless had a system where you had to wait 15 minutes because they knew you'd go in the store no matter, and they knew you might go away, and that would cut costs. I mean, there's that odd side of innovation and creativity on the side, but then there's also moving these forward. So I really hope that everybody looks at, am I innovating something that's going to make a
Mm.
difference? So a lot of the basic tools in AI are making a huge difference. I don't know, having a robot address a graduate school about being the keynote speaker it's innovative, but I don't know if it does anything any good for society. And I want to see, through innovation, let's find innovation that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And that's where it's kind of funny, because everybody's like scared about AI. It's like, it's just tools that help you do things better. So it shouldn't be scary. But if you're trying to create a robot, I can see the weirdness of it, and it does replace people. But hopefully, you can train people to do other stuff, because humans do a lot of
Mhm.
amazing things. And so, as long as AI is a tool to make things better, make things simpler, make better decisions, that's
What?
great. The other part, the scary part is, does AI eventually be a better trader than a day trader than myself, or long term hedge fund trader? But it does need, it hasn't gotten to the point where it evolves and can switch from stocks to bonds to forex. So, I'm very excited about innovation. I'm very excited about AI. I'm not scared about it, but I also want to put a lot of energy where we can use AI to
Right.
good. Again, is it something where people don't enjoy doing, people don't do it really well, and can AI come in there and help? So, calling with customer service with AI now, depending on their platform, can be a very pleasurable experience, because you can get results
Yeah.
right away without having to
In my
talk to
in, in
anybody.
my in my previous
And then,
podcast, I was talking with Dr. Maria Blacher, and we were speaking about the idea that machines can share with people a measure of empathy that is beyond what other people can do, which is fascinating in and of itself. But we'll park that idea, because that is a whole nother rabbit hole, which I don't want to go into just yet. But Stephen, I want to speak about innovation in the retail space, because you mentioned that you're there, and you mentioned you are recreating the innovation. So are there AI or blockchain type stuff that you're using in order to be able to bring forth innovation on that front?
100%. Some things we can definitely speak to, but others that might be a little close held to our chest at the moment. But so let's speak briefly on the blockchain piece. We are definitely looking at ways in which we can further disrupt the way how we receive payments. Definitely along the ways in which how payments are processed. But given the current scheduling, and of course, some of the ways in which we're supposed to hold our monies with some of our banking partners. Obviously, it's not something that we can do right now at the moment. But in regards to just simple customer service, when you're looking at the brick and mortar, the physical store, I would make the argument that a lot of folks would like to say that brick and mortar is dying. We think that it's simply evolving. And, with that being said, we're basically looking to push traffic or interest that we are getting from our store back into the digital landscape, where we would leverage technologies like AI chatbot, for instance, that could probably answer some more of the simple questions. But naturally, we would basically put up guardrails for those that may not necessarily be totally adaptable to that situation, where they might still require some additional assistance. Um, Furthermore, I would like to think that in the future, as a part of that innovation, as folks come into the store, they have more of the ability to be more, where there's more of a mass customization through the ability of either speaking to someone that's qualified or some sort of technology that can essentially provide more of the assistance that's more of a suitable product for someone's needs. Right now, we are essentially kind of pulling our product out on a need state basis, as opposed to just the simple categories that people are familiar with. And I think that's kind of a part of the transformation that we're trying to move through, is a part of that re-educational process. where we're sharing with folks where it may not necessarily just has to involve like combustible product, but there are other products that could essentially um, help or assist with folks that are enduring pain, anxiety, headaches, inflammation of some sort in one part of their body, and looking at different applications, different types of products, either if it's sublingual or something they can apply to the epidermal, or even just through their hair.
There's a lot.
And again,
There's a lot of
basically,
research that it's very very helpful to people who are suffering.
oh, 100%, yes. And honestly, like through those means, especially through technology, like with inside the space, having just simple screens or some sort of interactive experience and providing some of that during their visits, they're able to essentially kind of learn that during
I
the
know. You
shopping
said
experience.
earlier that you're expecting federal deregulation of sort, and obviously, no one can predict the future. Any thoughts on that you're allowed to share?
I would like to think, and again, I think this is on a conservative basis, definitely well before the end of the decade.
Definitely before the end of the decade. We are in 2004. For those of you who are not following, I'm a little slow myself. So we're talking about what, 6 years roughly?
Easily. I mean, I think maybe even ahead of that. Who knows? Again. I'm not a betting man, but if I had to place a bet, that's one that I would definitely bet myself. Right now, we're rescheduling from 1 to 3, per the Controlled Substance Act of 1970. Of course, nothing hasn't been signed into law, of course, but the necessary recommendations have already been set forth by the DEA, and of course, the White House is looking to basically sign a bill themselves to put
Wow.
into order.
So I think you mentioned a couple of different things in this last little segment, and the first part, which I think was the idea of people's ability to adapt for these new technologies and absorb them. And JD, you referred to this as well. I think you mentioned you were working with the fire departments to be able to take in new technologies. Like, is there any tactic or trick that either of you have picked up over time to help people become more comfortable with things that they are not comfortable with naturally? JD, why don't you get us started off there?
Well, it's really interesting because, like as I mentioned, we have two companies, very cutting edge AI and other technologies, chip technologies, and so it's really great when you can get the science together and they can start speaking to each other and have a deep understanding, so that but at the same time, you need somebody with a business mindset. And so, case and example for our chip company, it's going to be great to use in drones, and it's drones are a hot cutting edge. But one of my CFO friends pointed out the real place for the business is in safety for products and inspecting products and using cameras inside factories. And so, a lot of people will spend money on safety. Drones is a limited market, but that safety application can apply to all sorts of things, whether it's food, whether it's quality control, um, and it's hard really to do a balance, because with innovation you have to understand it. And every once in a while, I say, boy, I just want to retreat to real estate, and it's still pretty simple. So stay out of technology, because but it's just so amazing what you can learn and what you can do and what you can change with innovation. And even in the real estate, we changed the way we funded things. For example, hotels have gone through many iterations of the way you're funding it. So they actually had a period where it was condo hotels. Condo hotels was created because that was a means of funding hotels, where you actually got money for individual rooms, because at the time finance was a little more difficult. So, I think, life is simple. People make it complicated is one of my sayings, and I like to keep it simple. But still, innovation is going to bring some complexity. But then again, if we embrace it, that's great. I mean, we're sitting here doing Zoom calls versus being in an auditorium with people listening to us, and so that is and trust me, I was one of the first people to use GoTo meetings and GoTo webinar for investors. And it was very painful because everybody was used to phone calls, and you had to walk them through what exactly was a webinar, how you load it, and they could still join by phone. and you'd always have to go back to the phone people and find out, did you clear your cache? You know, did you
JD
install it
speaking my
on?
language. Did you reboot?
Yeah.
Did you reboot twice? There we go. Straight to the IT guy. There you go.
So here we are.
That's right.
But I can tell you, in 2002, doing webinars, it was new to a lot of people, and it was painful for them. But once they got into it, it was like, wow, because they could see a slideshow, you know, instead of hearing somebody talk about an opportunity and have that.
So you're driving straight at the fact that COVID was a major disruptor for the world, and everyone had to learn how to use all kinds of new things that they didn't know how to use before. And maybe, Steven, speak a little bit about how that changed your thinking, your outlook, and what new stuff were you forced perhaps to come up with in order to be able to solve issues?
Yeah, I mean, listen, JD, you definitely brought it back to '02. So I think a part of it is this. People are always going to want to put up a fight, right? Whenever there's innovation or there's some sort of change. And I think being able to communicate that benefit of what's to come after adopting this new change, it usually increases that amount of folks that are willing to adapt and adopt this new way of doing something. For us, you know, comparing pre to post COVID, um, we were very much looking at um, consumer experience through a different lens. Um, I'm not sure if we shied away so much away from keeping them at top of mind, but I would say this: post COVID, we definitely had placed a lot more emphasis on implementing more technology because now we're understanding that people are going to have a larger preference for convenience. And having the convenience or that flexibility might actually mean servicing me while I'm at home, or having the flexibility where I don't want to have to wait in line going into the store. I just want to go in and get out because I don't want to be around so many people. You know, that was definitely, you know, that disruption that was brought upon from COVID that we're definitely now starting to account for. And I would say that, you know, the other methodologies right now that in terms of that we have to accept payment just because of this just law, people are pushing back. They don't want to, right? But for those that have gone through the process of now, like, okay, it's okay for me to enter my banking details online via ACH, because here in New York, it's a law where product that goes out the door has to be prepaid. So it has to be an ACH transaction. You're not able to do like a PIN debit transaction of some sort. So a lot of people, they don't want to go through the whole process of spending, you know, the 4 to 6 minutes to look up their banking details and then insert them, right? But for the folks that have signed up already, whenever they're moving from either one store to the next, it's instant. Their profile immediately is recognized, it is pulled up. And I think that's honestly a byproduct of folks that are willing to maybe adapt to some of the innovation that's ongoing in the space. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of the whole
Sure.
experience.
JD, what do you think about COVID changing some of the things that you're doing?
Well, it's kind of amazing that it changed and then it kind of went back. You know, we're always co-syndicating with people on investing in deals. And there was a very lovely period where you could just do this all via COVID. You didn't have to go visit somebody in New York and then go to Chicago, go to Florida. Unfortunately, people still, when it comes to money, like to see people. So, you know, they're still returning back to having to hop on a plane.
It's true.
But you know, then there's game changers. I mean, Uber Eats. You can have your groceries delivered. You can have your groceries prepared for you when you show up to the store. You can go in and shop individually. So you know, COVID really brought about the need for change to all that activity. And then it also allows you to fit. It gives you more options. So I don't go out anymore for lunch unless I'm meeting somebody. I kind of miss seeing somebody at lunch, but it's still also very convenient that I can while we're sitting here order a salad and have it dropped off, and as long as I time it right, there won't be a doorbell ringing. And I don't have any dogs. I don't have that background barking. So that's the caveat is, crying. There's this whole trend too where wives want men to take care of their babies and the babies are like on the Zoom calls. I don't know if you've had that nightmare, but I have like 3 investors that have kids screaming in the background. And I'm like, please get a noise cancellation phone.
There's
but
there's the $1 billion idea.
Yeah, they're the ones writing checks, so I have to tolerate it a little bit. I every Christmas send them
Noise cancellation does not
phones.
work.
So, but yeah. So it's just actually that kind of goes back to there's disruptions that humans create, and then there's other disruptions, and I guess that's something very interesting, a lot more cognitive about. In the old days in New York City, you couldn't see the sun because there were all telegram wires up there because that became the new technology. And then even further back in London, you couldn't see the sky because everybody was burning coal. And then, I think 98% of the trees in Europe and especially the UK have been cut down during that time period for fuel. So, there was a need to shift because of things, that were man-made greater technologies and innovation to cause things. But then there's also the reaction. It's very interesting. So COVID, we had to react to, and it changed a lot. So I'm very glad that everything is everybody's using Zoom. Still, at the same time, now I have to find a new competitive advantage.
What do you think people are going to do with their offices?
That's a terrible question because I talked to a PR firm which is very innovative and talking to people. And so he literally pays for apartments to be in New York City that his employees can come stay in and go to meetings where they can meet face to face and whiteboard. So, I love whiteboarding, the energy, the thought, but then trying to get to the place where you're whiteboarding to be quite difficult. So whiteboarding is not really there yet for the energy, the sharing of activities, going out to eat. I love going out to eat with people because it forces you to have a 1 hour conversation with somebody, and versus so it allows you to have that creativity. It allows you to get to know each other. I find it very hard, other than this opportunity, to get to know people. Like I'm getting to know you and both you guys a lot better. So this is a great exercise actually into itself of getting to know people and build relationships. Um, so I am very optimistic about the future, but I don't want to lose the human interaction with people. I'm definitely a person that likes to shake hands, put my hand on somebody's shoulder, see eye to eye. But I'm also a person that, hey, I'm so glad I didn't have to get on a plane, fly to New York, go to a studio, have makeup put on me. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the funny days of the TVs were so inaccurate. Now you can see every little dimple I have and every little pore. But back in the old days, you had to look normal. You had to cake yourself on, and so things are getting better.
Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, Ron Burgundy, exactly. So, yeah, I'm glad we're here today. I'm glad we're having a fun conversation, and I love having this conversation with people online. But I also always tell people, anytime you want to come out to California, San Diego, I'll put you on a golf course, and then if there looks like solid business, I'll be happy to pay for a 5-star hotel for.
It's
but it has to be some money. I'm not providing a free trip. But if there's something solid, I'll be glad to convince you to come to Southern California or New York City. I mean, New York City is a great place, as we know. So, 2 different worlds.
Yeah. So, firstly, thank you so much. And New York City is an unbelievable place. And Steven and I are here. JD, you're here frequently, in spite of the fact that COVID has made you come less frequently. We are disappointed, but when you do come, we definitely want to see you in person. You definitely are speaking about something that I think is critical, and that is we humans gain much from in-person interactions. And my wife shared a funny story about that. She was talking to one of her colleagues at work who was in technology, and she was talking to their technology folks, my counterpart at this other firm, who sent her an answer to a question that she sent via an AI that produced the answer. And the answer was perfect. It answered the question, but it did not have the human interaction. It did not have, as JD was speaking about, whiteboarding and energy. And, what does this even mean for young folks? So, Steven, now the ball's in your court. What do we do with our offices? Is there a future for in-person life and in work and things like that?
Very, very loaded question. And I think you're just getting to like to the tip of it, right? Because it definitely impacts all of us, all age groups, right? Demographics. But in regards to what we do with office space that might be underperforming, I think that there is opportunity to also address some of the other issues that we have hailing our community up here. And I think housing is an easy one. You know, folks are talking about, at least in Midtown East and some other corridors along that Broadway, along Chelsea, they want to see more affordable projects get put up. And, unfortunately back in 17, when the J51 tax abatement program went away and Cuomo's legislation had put a stop to a lot of the fix and flips with the rent control units, it basically provided a freeze over New York City real estate, right? And with that tightening inventory, it just led to the issues that we're seeing today, if not more. I feel like it further exacerbated it. So I think, in addition to, the easy answer I think is development, but unfortunately it's a lot more difficult than just that, because some of these office buildings are not easily convertible over to just that multi-family use, right? But I would like to think that there is a scenario that plays out that it can just simply be mixed use, combination of multifamily and office. I don't know about ground floor retail at the current pricing that they're talking about. And I think there's going to have to be change in itself in which how the banks are looking at, or even the tax assessor's office, on how they're coming up with value in some of these properties. Because something's going to have to,
It's
to shed.
fascinating that you mentioned the government intervention, if you will. And I think we're all free market people here. So I would say that, the government went with all good intentions to be able to try and solve a problem, and went ahead and created an exacerbated issue, and potentially created a problem that they could not even foresee. So here they thought they were helping people, and what wound up happening is people reduced inventory. Maybe let's speak about the role of government in innovation. GD, you got a couple of thoughts on that, and maybe with that, and then Steve, you take that, and we'll wrap it up at the end of the in the next 5-10 minutes.
It's really funny because it's an extreme. Government can provide grants and money to create new technologies. We're talking on cell phones because it was developed by the military. So, wow, those are costs that most people cannot afford to do the R&D. So it has a big role actually in innovation from a standpoint of technology if it's willing to provide grants and support things, even though that's still your tax money. But then the scarier part is the red tape that just kills innovation. The rules, the regulations, I worked on Capitol Hill for a short while. Even back in 1987, to start a business properly, it was done by paper. The paperwork to do business properly was about 3 feet tall. I mean, it was just unbelievable how much paperwork you had to go through if you wanted to correctly set up your business. The tax code. Look at that. There's something creative that is a pile of red tape. So let's not even open that can. But I'm very excited that grants and other pieces. I don't even think about that's my tax money. Maybe if somebody said, "Hey, JD, you have to come to my door and say, give me $5. We're going to put some money into some technology, your tax money, then I direct differently. But it's so crazy because at one end, it's fueled a lot of amazing technology. On the other end, the amount of red tape, especially in the pharmaceutical and healthcare space, the amount of anti-growth and regulatory red tape stuff is just a nightmare. But I think I would give up the grants for getting rid of the red tape. Sure.
So if that's the trade-off, that's what you would go?
Yeah, I would definitely say I love grants, but I'll roll the dice and count on innovation.
What do you think? What do you think, Steven? Would you make that trade?
I don't think JD's that far off from the truth.
Yeah, tell me more. Come on, you got to tell me more.
Take some of those little things on your table, those edibles, and then let's let it free roll.
Only half of one, of course, right?
You can't be like
Microdosing.
Elon Musk smoking a doobie on a webinar, but.
Oh no, never that. I mean, honestly, I think the problem is I have a problem with the value of New York City real estate. It's too high, unsustainable. Only in New York, versus like other local markets, it's okay to acquire a cash flowing property negatively levered. If my cost of capital is higher than the income I'm receiving, that's acceptable in New York because ultimately we're banking on a higher year over year appreciation. It's going to come. It's happening. There's no more land. And I don't know. Is that a part of the issue? Ultimately, if there was a way, a mechanism, obviously, even just looking at as simple as supply and demand, if supply was much greater, obviously that would bring value down. Over a long haul, maybe there's tax credits. Maybe there are further incentives that are brought upon that awards long-term ownership where I would never have thought in a million years I'd be one to say this, but I think there does need to be more government intervention in order to save New York City real estate. Because otherwise, the pathway in which that we're going right now, there's not enough development, there's not enough housing. Office, they're definitely going to try to save it, of course, but how? It may not be through development. It may be like, oh, let's just turn this into an oversized condo, have another sovereign fund or a family office come in and build out the project. And of course, they're going to be the ones that will have access to have the right government relations to come in to essentially piece that cap stack for them where it makes sense. It pencils. It's more tolerable. And I don't think it's that accessible to even to maybe a regular size high net worth individual that might be like sub 30 million in net worth or even smaller, that's kind of like where I am right now at the moment. So,
so I'll ask you for your last thoughts on the subject because it sounds like we all have challenges and there's a lot of optimism in the system.
There's optimism. There is. Yeah, there is.
The future is bright through innovation. JD, what do you think? Future is bright through innovation?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I asked that successful CEOs that are retired get back into the game and let's buy some of those boring companies and then let's look at how we can use innovation to take them to the next level. And that's what I love doing. I call it cake building. You buy boring EBITDA companies and then you have frosting and filling that make that impact.
JD, I'm going to disagree with you. There is no such thing as boring EBITDA. So. There is no such thing as boring EBITDA.
Yeah, it all depends on the way you're looking at it. It's a beautiful thing.
Stable, small growth year over year.
Build the business, build it right. Make sure that your cash flow is good. Having things that are upside down, eventually somebody pays dearly for making those mistakes. So hopefully, Steve, you're right, and that year over year the real estate will appreciate, and people who are upside down, don't wind up paying dearly like they did in 07 and 08. But, you know, these are crazy stories. And like, you know, nothing happens forever the same way it always did. You know, I think Nassim Taleb wrote a whole book about, you know, black swans. That happens.
The history does repeat
and it
itself,
does.
though.
And it does. And it does. So on that positive note, I want to thank you both, Steven Etienne, JD Morris. Gentlemen, this was an absolute pleasure. I'm glad that I got to make some new friends on this podcast. It was truly a pleasure to learn more about what you're doing and how you're going about doing it. And I'll wrap up by saying this, that Ventures and Visionaries is sponsored by KJ Technology. KJ Technology provides advisory and cybersecurity process consulting services. It is also a full managed IT services firm. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We are glad again to have JD Morris and Steve Etienne as my guests today, and I thank you very much for joining. Have a wonderful day.